Hello, my name is John Gregg, and I just wrote this book, Sex, the Illustrated History Through Time, Religion, and Culture.
John, what was your inspiration for writing this book?
Well, I've always been interested in world cultures. And when I was researching, I found that there was not a lot of information on sexual practices worldwide. And I hope to bring a lens to look at cultures worldwide and how sex and religion influence their daily lives.
How are you qualified to write this book?
Well, I have advanced degrees in the teaching of anthropology and history. I've taught at numerous universities. I've lived and studied with teachers in India and Old Tibet. And I spent the last 15 years researching sexual and religious practices among peoples of the world.
John, what will people find in your book that they might not find anywhere else?
Well, first, I think they'll find honesty. I really wanted to approach this topic with a new level of honesty that hadn't been possible in previous times. And so the book delves into many things that have been kept into the shadows for many years, like human bisexuality, like the exploitation of women and boys in sexuality, religious suppression of sex, and religious abuse of sex. The book is also uncensored in that vein. And the illustrations in the book, of which there are more than 300, are sometimes they might be shocking to people, but they illustrate how different cultures viewed their sexuality and how they practice sex. And I think they're very important in understanding how these cultures viewed their own sexuality.
John, your book has a lot to say about how religion has affected sex and sexuality. Can you give us an example of this?
Well, religion and sex have always been bedfellows. And this is kind of strange, but they go hand in hand. People envision their sexuality in connection with how they view their gods and goddesses. This has a lot to do with the way they express their whole sexuality in each culture. In this first volume, I'm looking at the ancient world, particularly the gods and goddesses, and how they influence the sexuality. In Greece, Rome, Samaria, Egypt, the gods and goddesses and sexuality were part of everyday life. The gods themselves were sexual beings. They had each male had a female counterpart, and they were fertility deities. And there was a lot of openness about the practice of sex and sexuality. When Christianity came to the West, there was a tremendous change because God became sexless, without a female counterpart. And spirit and matter were all of a sudden separated. And for that reason, they became sinful. This led to guilt and shame in the Western world that's been with us for 2,000 years at this point. And this is part of what the book is about, is comparing how different cultures view sex and how our views of sexuality change through time, culture, and religion.
Can you share a tidbit from the book?
Well, in ancient Roman society and Greek society, the portrayal of sex was much more blatant and obvious than in our society today. Inside the home, for instance, there were lamps, some bowls, plates adorned with erotic material. And you'll see this also in the illustrations of the book. The wealthy would hire the best artist to decorate a room of their house with sexual motifs. Outside on the streets, there was graffiti everywhere. Grandmothers and young children walking to market would see these every day. When they went to the baths, the public bathhouses, there were erotic murals, frescoes that portrayed all sorts of sexuality. Festivals and parades were openly sexual, with bawdy songs and dances, and the whole family was there to witness these. None of this was considered pornographic. It was just a natural part of everyday life for the Greeks and Romans.
So, John, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, information is power. And I hope that this information contributes to people's freedom and empowerment.